Hey everyone, welcome back to the Push Pace Podcast, a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to pushing ourselves towards better, happier versions of ourselves. And today I wanted to take a dive into learning a little bit more about eating more plant-based. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have been vegan now for close to 3 years. It'll be 3 years at the end of March where I've eliminated meat, dairy, and eggs out of my diet completely. Now, before I was vegan, I was vegetarian for a year, where I just started taking out meat from my diet, and that was around, the year 2015, I guess, 2015 to 2016. And then from there went full vegan, and ever since then, it has been quite the journey as far as really sort of optimizing a fully plant-based diet, and I've learned a lot of things along the way, and I just kind of want to share a few different resources, a few different insights for you if you're somebody who's been interested in incorporating more plant-based eating into your diet. Now, obviously, I'm not going to diss you if you're not vegan or whatever, but I just want to give you some ideas and some clarity on a lot of misconceptions and perhaps provide you with some insight into understanding that a plant-based diet is not actually as crazy as it might sound. It's not as restrictive as it might sound, and hopefully open your eyes up to the true power of plants. So to kick things off, I wanted to give you a list of different books to check out if you're interested in really, and these are the books that have really solidified my position in understanding that I'm never, ever, ever going to eat animal products intentionally ever again. There is absolutely no need for me to do so. And as far as from an ethical, environmental, and health standpoint, these books help me understand that being fully plant-based is the optimal way to live for me, and for what I would consider is for the majority of people as well. But to give you some good book ideas for things to look into, my favorite books have been How Not to Die, which was written by Michael Greger. That is definitely the number one book as far as a science-packed book, but a science that's really put into terms that we can all understand, even if you don't have necessarily a science background. But it's a completely evidence-based book giving you the strategies on how not to die from essentially the world's most chronic diseases, especially the ones that really cripple the westernized world. So that's a great book. That's my number one recommendation. And then another great book too, my second recommendation would be Proteinaholic. And that was written by Dr. Garth Davis. And that book is an awesome book that really looks into the obsession that we have over protein. And you might be someone who might be currently protein obsessed, just like I was, just like a majority of us are, where, in the Western world, we really frame protein as this miracle nutrient that does all sorts of miracles, where in reality, we consume the most protein out of any other, developed country in the world, yet we have the highest rates of disease. And this book really takes a deep dive look into understanding why we started becoming obsessive over protein and how it actually is killing us, and how our protein requirements and our protein optimization is a lot different than we think it is. And this book isn't trying to tell you that protein is not important, because obviously it is important, but the quantity of how much we're consuming, how it's actually not good for our health overall, and giving you strategies to implement more of an optimized protein intake into your diet, which, spoiler alert, is a lot less than you think you need. Just to put that in perspective, I'm 6'8", I weigh around 200, I'm close to 220 pounds now, and maintaining a relatively low body fat, around 10% or so. And for me, I eat around 150 to 165 grams of protein a day. And that has been great for me as far as preserving musculature and really being a good asset to my athletic performance. So that's just a little bit of a talk about protein, a great book to check out. And then if you are someone who feels like, Austin, I can cut out meat from my diet, but I cannot cut out cheese. Cheese is just too good. I just love cheese. Well, there's a great book, and it's called The Cheese Trap. And that was written by Dr. Neil Barnard, and it talks about how cheese has really it truly is an addictive substance, as far as it goes into the science of how, these concentrated dairy proteins, when they're melted down and concentrated into these cheese products, how the the opiate effects of it, which are designed biologically to keep a young calf wanting milk from its mother to grow, how we consume that and how it affects our brain and how it ultimately becomes like this very highly addictive food that is extremely, extremely bad for our health, does nothing good for our bodies whatsoever, is a huge cause for inflammation, acne, and things like that. And so it's a great book to help you understand that our reliance on cheese, our addiction to cheese is not good for our health, and steps to move away from reliance and dependence on cheese. So How Not to Die, Proteinaholic, and The Cheese Trap are 3 awesome books. And right now I'm reading Dr. Greger's newest book, How Not to Diet. Not How Not to Die, but How Not to Diet, where it's talking about the science of obesity and how we can truly, truly combat it. And the work that Dr. Michael Greger does, his main website it's called nutritionfacts.org. And that's another resource that I really, really recommend that you check out. It's got an amazing YouTube channel, especially, where Michael Greger and his team, they basically dig through the thousands and thousands and thousands of publications that are put into, the nutrition literature, and to help us essentially as normal, people that aren't deep diving into a lot of science studies, understand what the majority of the scientific evidence says, towards a whole variety, towards every single type of health issue you can possibly think of. I mean, some of these videos are extremely specific on specific men's and women's health issues. And it's the only YouTube channel and the only resource I've ever seen ever that is just so jam-packed full of true science, not, success stories and anecdotal claims from people. Like, what does the science say? And it's put into such a way that it's so digestible by anyone who even doesn't have a science background, to make you understand that, that's what the science is saying. This is what the literature is showing us for these different health issues. So definitely check out nutritionfacts.org, and the YouTube channel associated with it too has its own podcast too, where it takes those YouTube videos and puts it into an audio form, and they're really, really interesting to listen to. And it's everything that's done on nutritionfacts.org, all the books that are sold from How Not to Die and How Not to Diet, all the proceeds from that are donated to charity. There's no ads on the websites. There's no hint of any sort of corporate sponsorship or anything. No egg industry or dairy industry trying to, fabricate studies or you know what I mean? It's truly wholesome science dedicated to trying to make you a healthier you. And it is just an amazing website and resource. And part of nutritionfacts.org, one last little resource I want to talk about before I get into some food style change choices that I've used personally that I think would really help you as well. The last resource is from nutritionfacts.org, and that is the Daily Dozen. Now, this is a super small app that you can get on your phone, but essentially it is a checklist of 12 different, essentially, not nutrients, but foods and things to do each day to help you optimize your health. So a couple of these points, for instance, are exercise for 60 minutes a day, moderate exercise, water and liquids, 5 cups of liquids a day at least. But then there's other specifics 3 servings of fruit a day, 1 serving of flax seeds a day, a serving of cruciferous vegetables a day, 2 servings of green vegetables per day. And what's cool is that the app will show you, it'll give you the different options that you can do to help fill in those boxes. And it's there to just give you kind of a daily checklist to make sure that you're on track getting in the proper nutrients from the most health promoting foods out there. So it's a cool little tool to use when you're first starting to eat plant-based, to give you ideas of the foods you should be focusing your eating around. So definitely recommend checking that out. It's a free app. Just search in the App Store on iPhone or Android. Just type in Daily Dozen. It'll be the first thing that pops up. So those are some resources I've talked to a lot of people individually about it, but I feel it feels really good to get onto the podcast and really say this like to the masses for everyone that is wondering and that is always asking me. Those are the best resources, in my opinion, to help you get started towards eating more plant-based. Now, I want to talk a little bit to kind of conclude all this about simple switches in your daily eating routine to give you some ideas of more plant-based options that you can do to help you transition into eating more plant-based. So, and I just kind of want to break it down into like breakfast meals and then sort of lunch and dinner meals. So thinking about breakfast, there's a few different options. And these are kind of the three main breakfasts that I enjoy and the ones that I would encourage you to focus on as one of the best ways to eat more plant-based, because breakfast is a really easy switch to do. For instance, one of the options that you can do is instead of, cooking up eggs in the morning, making an egg scramble or whatever, substituting that out for a tofu scramble. You'd be shocked at the tofu consistency of firm tofu when you mash it up with a fork and then you put it on a pan and cook it up like you would for eggs, and you add some seasonings, of course, and you can make that into like a little muffin sandwich or English muffin sandwich or toast or whatever it might be. But something as simple as tofu scrambled with spices like black pepper and turmeric, for instance, with some hot sauce and some avocado spread on some Dave's Killer Bread toast. Like, that's a freaking epic, totally vegan breakfast right there. And so knowing that you can switch out whatever you would use for an egg sandwich with tofu instead, it's just a great option right there. And it's the exact same kind of prep that you would do, is just kind of cook it on a stovetop. And then you're like, oh, I want a little sausage patty with it. Well, guess what? There are so many totally 100% vegan like meat substitute patties that are out there, and you would be shocked at how good they taste and how almost identical they taste to these pork and beef and chicken sausage crap stuff. And so right there, that's a very simple switch that gives you the similar taste, texture, consistency, and style of a breakfast that you might be used to eating. Now, some other breakfast ideas as well. Oatmeal is a great one. Now, some people don't like oatmeal. So if you don't like oatmeal, try the tofu scramble or try the next thing I'll tell you after. But for those that are fans of oatmeal, the possibilities with oatmeal are endless when it comes to making a super awesome plant-powered oatmeal. Some of my favorite things to add in, chopped up dates. If you've never tried dates before, they are super good. Now, they are really high in calories, so be careful as far as how many you're adding in, because, of course, when it comes to managing our weight, we have to be managing our caloric balance as the main object of concern. So we don't want to be overeating calories, of course. And dates are super sweet, super calorically dense, but they are super good to add in, and they add a nice little chewy texture to the oatmeal. That is one of my favorites, as well as walnuts or pumpkin seeds. Those, nuts and seeds are extremely, extremely healthy for the body, and especially walnuts and pumpkin seeds being very high protein content and just very nutritionally dense as well. They mix in awesome with oatmeal. But there's a whole other bunch of stuff you could add too. You can add whatever sort of mixed berries you like, whether you like blueberries or raspberries or a mixture of a bunch of mixed berries, or bananas are great too as well. In fact, mashing a banana with a fork, like in a bowl, and then pouring it into the oatmeal and then mixing it, it is amazing. And of course, topping it with something like cinnamon, it just adds a whole new level of spice and flavor. I would definitely recommend avoiding adding things like syrups and like agave nectar and stuff like that, where, it's more of kind of a processed sweetness adder to it, where adding in berries or dates and cinnamon is another way to add sweetness, but in a whole plant food form, which is definitely much healthier. But all you need to do is really Google, vegan oatmeal ideas to see just an endless possibility of combinations that you can add to make oatmeal awesome and a great way to start your day. And then the last sort of plant-based breakfast idea, the one that I do every single day, are smoothies. Now, smoothies are awesome because just like oatmeal, you can make a whole variety of different combos of smoothie ideas. For me, I love to put in bananas, nut butters like peanut butter or almond butter, as well as seeds like hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, mix berries along with that, maybe even a little scoop of protein powder in there. You can really scale smoothies to be however big or small you'd like them to be. They're super tasty, they're super sweet, and they're a great way to start off the morning. Now, one of the main reasons why I like smoothies is that they digest very quickly. It allows me to get in a bunch of calories sort of in one big shot. And as someone who eats close to 5,000 calories every single day, that definitely helps me out as far as just not having to chew a bunch of food. So you want to be mindful of that a smoothie is a way to get in a lot of calories quickly. So I would encourage you that if you do go for smoothies, to try to sip them slowly throughout a period of time, maybe like 15 to 20 minutes, instead of trying to gulp it all down like I do, unless you are someone who struggles to maintain weight, in which case, chug down those smoothies because they are great and you never really get tired of them because there's always something you can mix up or add in. One thing that I should add in but I usually just don't have room in the blender for are things like frozen spinach. It's a great easy way to get in some green vegetables that are so good for you that mix right in. And especially if you have a very strong blender like a Vitamix or a Ninja, and it just kind of disintegrates whatever you put into it. It's a great way to get in your green vegetables too. So those are some breakfast ideas, and I'd say breakfast is one of the easiest things to make a transition to. And if it's something that you want to consider, why not just try one of those things for one day of the week this next week, or 2 days, or, maybe make your whole week a vegan breakfast. These are just some ideas to get you started. Now, going into more lunch and dinner ideas, I just want to give you kind of 4 main kind of combos that I really like to do and sort of how I like to structure my meals and how it's actually a lot simpler than you might think, and it's actually pretty affordable too. Now, for the most part, when I structure my lunch and dinner meals, the main focus of sort of the big volume of the dish is, for me, it's a starch-based food of some sort. So we're talking rice, quinoa, some sort of potato, and red potatoes, sweet potatoes, russet potatoes, some sort of grain like a whole grain pasta, some sort of real starchy food, or even like beans as a base of that too. Beans would count as a starchy food too. These foods that have a lot of volume to them, a lot of fiber, but a lot of nutrition packed in them as well. It's a great way, just a great base to have for your foods. And all of those foods are very, very cheap and affordable. And then with that starch sort of main portion of it, adding in the additional vegetables with that too. So onions and garlic are one of my go-tos that I add in every single time with any sort of savory meal because it always just makes it awesome. So putting some onions and garlic on the pan, and then adding in things like broccoli is one of my favorites as well. I also bell peppers, they're technically fruits, but I consider them vegetables. I love adding in bell peppers as well. You really can't go wrong just adding different types of vegetables with onions and garlic to any sort of savory dish. And those vegetables, especially so low in calories, but so high in nutritional density, and add so much good flavor to whatever meal you're eating, especially if you add some spices to it too. It's a foolproof way to set yourself up for really nutritious food that is especially geared towards weight loss. And that's just a quick thing too about starch. Another great book, if you've made it this far and you want another book recommendation, The Starch Solution was a really, really interesting book too, because a lot of us think foods like potatoes and stuff are fattening for us or make us fat, or carbs make us fat, where it's that's a freaking joke. Caloric surplus makes us fat, and so when we take potatoes and deep fry them and add bacon and sour cream, and adding 900 calories to it in the form of oil and get bacon and stuff and cheese and stuff, that's what makes these foods fattening. It's not like the whole food itself. You could, if you ate only potatoes without anything on them, there's no way you could get fat off of doing that. And this book really sort of talks about why starchy foods are so indeed slimming for our bodies and not actually making you heavy. So, and that is all science backed as well. I'm not just talking out of my butt here. So definitely check out The Starch Solution if you're someone who fears things like potatoes or fears things like rice and thinks that those foods make you fat, because they don't. So with the starch base, the added vegetables, which in any case, like, if you're trying to lose weight, add as many vegetables as you possibly can. Like, find the ones that you like and eat a lot of those. If you're someone who's trying to maintain weight, you want to add in your vegetables, of course, but you don't want that to make up a huge portion of your meal because, again, it's low in calories, high in fiber, and if you're consuming a lot of calories to maintain weight like I do, you can't just be you don't want to just over-consume vegetables because you might have some digestive issues from doing so, and you might not be getting in the calorie count that you need. Then the last main thing to add to these dishes, starch, veggies, and then a more protein-focused food. And what I mean by this is, I talked earlier about how protein isn't this miracle nutrient, and we don't need nearly as much as we think we do in most cases. But you do, there is science out there that suggests that having a certain amount of protein in your diet based off of your body weight, based off of your goals can help you optimize your fitness and your health and your training towards whatever your goal is. And so because of that, I like to try to have a protein-focused food added in to whatever the main dish is. And that can be in the form of something like lentils, some sort of legume, or tofu, or tempeh, or, foods like that, garbanzo beans, black beans, a food that has a generally higher protein content that is, of course, plant-based. Having that in there not only adds some good flavor and texture to the meal too, but it helps boost the protein content a little bit to get you towards your protein goals, whatever that might be for whatever fitness endeavor that you have. And so with those being sort of the main focuses, some of the best combos out there, make up some pasta, some whole wheat pasta with some meat, which you can get some fake meat substitutes from, stores like Trader Joe's or Safeway. They've got so many different ground fake meat options that taste exactly like meat that are generally even healthier for you than meat on its own. Mixing that in with the red sauce and a bunch of vegetables, a bunch of stir-fry vegetables with that too. It's just so yummy, so good. So there's your meat pasta right there. It's something you might eat already, but now you've just plant-based it more. That plus another good one too is, you ever tried a tempeh sandwich? Tempeh is sort of a less processed form of tofu. It's still soybeans, but it's great because it comes in a little brick. You can cut it up just like you would for something you could put into a sandwich, and then adding in, maybe some lettuce and tomato and onion and maybe a little vegan mayo on there too. You've got yourself a cool little lunch sandwich. Do that on some whole grain bread, not some white Wonder Bread, of course. You want some nutritional value in there. That's a great lunch option. And then, things like burritos and taco salads. You add in some rice, some beans, some salsa, some avocado, some chips for some extra crunch is a little extra thing to flare in there. And they even have things like plant-based cheese alternatives that you can sprinkle in if you're still trying to wean off cheese. Burritos and taco salads are the way to go. And then things, you can even make it more Asian or Indian style, making up curries with chickpeas and rice and, utilizing things like coconut milk. And, there's so many amazing options out there. Stir-fry noodles with vegetables and tofu. There's just so many cool options out there that are just so satiating and so satisfying and so delicious that I definitely encourage you to try it out. The variety out there really is expansive. It's just all about kind of getting yourself out of the mindset of a chunk of meat with some things surrounding it as your meals. Get out of that mindset, and it really opens up your world to the just hundreds and hundreds of different plant combinations out there that can make some really healthful, really nutritious food and get you started into eating more plant-based, which, according to the scientific research as of now, is the healthier way to go. So those are the different resources, the different things that I suggest that you check out and try out, maybe give some of those meal ideas a try. And I'm happy to help out more specifically with maybe some plant-based eating concerns that you might have. Feel free to shoot me a message or leave me a comment, and I'll try to get to that if I can. But I hope this could give you a little bit more insight into how I eat and some resources if it's something that eating more plant-based is something you've been considering. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. As always, I appreciate it. Be sure to rate the podcast if you haven't already. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see or hear from next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.